Run my company for a day and I'll marry you. Raymond B. Branch pointed at the leather CEO chair behind the mahogany desk. 15 executives erupted in laughter. Karen Crawford froze, mop handle gripped in both hands. The 34-year-old janitor straightened slowly. Raymond kicked the quarterly report across the marble floor. Go ahead, pick it up. The laughter crescendoed. Phones emerged, recording. Karen's jaw tightened slightly. She bent down, retrieved the report, its pages showing the $2.4 million miscalculation she'd quietly corrected. You serious? Her voice came out calm, controlled. Raymond's Italian loafers clicked closer. Of course not. You probably balance your checkbook with crayons. He turned to his audience. Imagine a janitor who mops floors running a billion-dollar investment firm. Karen met his eyes, said nothing. But something flickered there, something Raymond missed entirely. The janitor he'd just humiliated held secrets that built his empire before he was born. When you mock someone based on their uniform, you might be challenging the very person who will expose everything you've stolen. Watch what Karen does next. 2 decades earlier, Robert Crawford's financial empire had collapsed overnight. Federal raids, fraud charges, a show trial that ended in conviction. His son died in prison. His daughter disappeared. Raymond's father, Harrison Branch, had acquired Crawford Equity's proprietary algorithms for pennies during the bankruptcy liquidation. Those algorithms became the foundation of Branch Dynamics, a $3 billion fortress built on another man's intellectual property. Karen had started her night shift 3 years ago. $14.50 an hour. No benefits, no recognition. Every night, she cleaned 17 floors of the Branch Tower, starting from the executive suite. The ammonia burned her lungs. The fluorescent lights triggered migraines, remnants of stress-induced illness from losing everything. Tonight was different. Raymond stayed late again, preparing for tomorrow's investor presentation in the glass-walled boardroom. Karen pushed her cart past his office, catching glimpses of financial projections spread across dual monitors. The quarterly earnings report lay open on his desk. Her eyes caught the numbers immediately. Revenue projections at $847 million, but the subsidiary consolidations showed only $844.6 million. The $2.4 million discrepancy made her pause mid-step. Admiring my work? Raymond's voice cut through the silence. He stood in the doorway, tie loosened, whiskey glass in hand. These numbers are more complex than your entire education. Karen resumed mopping. Just doing my job, sir. Your job? He laughed. You know what's funny? This quarterly report represents more capital movement than you'll see in 10 lifetimes. He walked closer, his cologne, Creed Aventus, $500 a bottle, overpowering the cleaning solution. But you wouldn't understand market dynamics, would you? The boardroom door opened. Elliot Vance entered. The 48-year-old CFO's usually composed demeanor fractured. His hands trembled slightly as he poured scotch from the crystal decanter. Raymond, we need to discuss the Meridian acquisition. His voice carried urgency. The $300 million wire transfer needs to clear by Friday. Everything's arranged. It better be. Raymond's tone turned sharp. My father built this firm on precision. I won't tolerate mistakes. Elliot's gaze shifted to the Manhattan skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. Something passed across his face, calculation mixed with fear. Your father was careful about who he trusted, and I'm smarter. Raymond's words dripped ice. That's not what... Elliot stopped. Noticed Karen emptying her bucket nearby. We shouldn't discuss this around staff. Karen moved to the executive restroom. The mirror reflected her face. sharp cheekbones, eyes that held suppressed brilliance. She reached into her uniform pocket, pulled out a small leather notebook. Inside, encrypted spreadsheets, account numbers, transaction dates, 3 years of data collection. Her hands didn't tremble as she added tonight's observation. Back in the boardroom, she noticed something else. A paper trail near the recycling bin. Vendor invoices for Apex Consulting Solutions. 8 monthly payments of $4.2 million each. But cross-referenced with the budget reports she'd photographed last week, Apex didn't appear in any official ledger. Shell company, embezzlement, classic CFO fraud. Sarah Mitchell appeared in the hallway, the 41-year-old VP of Operations working late, clutching a folder marked Confidential. Board review. She saw Karen, offered an exhausted smile. "Long night?" she asked quietly. "Always is, Ms. Mitchell." Sarah glanced toward Raymond's office, lowered her voice. "He's getting more reckless, just like his father before the Crawford scandal." She paused. "You've been here a while. Have you ever noticed anything unusual? Financial irregularities?" Karen's expression remained neutral, but her mind raced. "I just clean, ma'am, but I notice everything." The boardroom emptied at 11:47 p.m. Karen waited 15 minutes, protocol she'd established during year 1, before returning with her cart. The marble floor still bore the scuff marks from Raymond's Italian loafers, the circular stain where his whiskey glass had sweated through its coaster. She worked methodically, wiping down the mahogany table, emptying trash bins, straightening chairs that cost more than most people's cars. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but her mind replayed the evening on loop. "Run my company for a day and I'll marry you." The laughter. 15 executives, their faces blurred into a singular mass of contempt. Phones recording her humiliation for social media entertainment. Raymond's smirk, so similar to his father's it had made her stomach clench. "You probably balance your checkbook with crayons." Karen's jaw tightened. She finished the floor, then locked the boardroom door from inside, a trick she'd learned in month 2 when she'd cloned the master key during a misplaced maintenance request. From beneath the false bottom of her cleaning cart, she retrieved a tablet. Not the cheap Android knockoff visible in her locker. This was military-grade encrypted, running a custom Linux distribution that routed through 7 proxy servers. Her fingers moved across the screen, folders within folders, each layer protected by biometric authentication and a 256-character password that changed daily. Crawford Equity, 2005. The file opened. Court documents, FBI raid reports, financial statements that told a story of systematic destruction. Karen's eyes scanned data she'd memorized years ago, the numbers as familiar as her own heartbeat. March 2005. Crawford Equity manages $4.2 billion in assets. Robert Crawford's proprietary algorithm, Apex, Adaptive Portfolio Optimization, generates 34% returns, making him the most sought-after strategist on Wall Street. She scrolled further. April 2005, Harrison Branch, CEO of struggling Branch Financial, approaches Robert Crawford about a partnership. Robert declines. His algorithms aren't for sale. Karen's finger paused on a scanned photograph. Her father, 53 years old, standing in his corner office. Gray suit, warm smile, eyes that held both brilliance and kindness. Behind him, her brother Marcus, 26, fresh from his Harvard MBA, already making a name as Crawford Equity's rising star. May 2005. Anonymous tip to FBI. Crawford Equity accused of securities fraud, allegations of insider trading, market manipulation. Client fund misappropriation. She remembered that morning. Federal agents storming their Connecticut home at 6 a.m. Her mother screaming. Marcus trying to shield their father, hands behind his back, confusion turning to horror as reality crystallized. Karen had been 17. Freshman year at MIT, dual majoring in mathematics and finance. She'd driven home to find news vans camped outside their house, reporters shouting questions about crimes she couldn't comprehend. June 2005, trial begins. Prosecution presents evidence, fabricated transaction records, falsified client statements, testimony from paid witnesses who'd never worked at Crawford Equity. Defense crumbles. Robert Crawford's own algorithms, somehow altered in discovery, now prove systematic fraud. Karen closed her eyes. She could still hear her father's voice during visiting hours at the Federal Detention Center. They've taken everything, Karen. Our reputation, our freedom, our truth. But they can't take what you know. Remember, numbers don't lie. People do. The prosecution's star witness, Harrison Branch, who'd discovered the fraud while conducting due diligence for a potential acquisition. His testimony, delivered with manufactured reluctance, painted Robert Crawford as a sociopath who'd built an empire on stolen money. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Robert Crawford, 25 years federal prison. Marcus Crawford, 15 years as an accomplice. August 2005. Crawford. Equity liquidated in bankruptcy proceedings. Harrison Branch acquires company assets, including the Apex algorithm, for $8.7 million, 2% of actual value. September 2005. Branch Financial rebrands as Branch Dynamics. Launches new proprietary trading system. Returns mirror Apex's performance exactly. Karen opened another file. Prison records. November 2007. Marcus Crawford dies in Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary. Official cause, suicide by hanging. Unofficial, beaten by inmates paid by someone with resources. She'd been 20 when they called. Mid-semester at MIT, working on her master's thesis. The warden's voice, clinical and detached, informing her that her brother was gone. Her mother had lasted 6 more months. Heart attack, the doctors said. Broken heart. Karen knew. December 2008. Robert Crawford dies in prison. Untreated pneumonia that turned septic. Age 56. Karen was alone, 21 years old, orphaned. Her family's name synonymous with fraud. The full scholarship to MIT disappeared. Donors didn't want association with that family. She'd finished her PhD working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, driven by something beyond ambition. Revenge? No. Too simple. Justice? Too naive. Truth? Getting warmer. She scrolled to another folder. Infiltration. 2019. Karen Crawford applies to Branch Dynamics. Not for analyst positions, not for strategy roles, for night janitorial staff. The application had been perfect. GED education. Previous cleaning experience at a Boston hotel. References that checked out because she'd created them, complete with working phone numbers answered by burner phones she controlled. Nobody looked deeper. Why would they? Janitors were invisible. 2022. 3 years of access. Executive calendars photographed. Confidential memos copied. Financial discrepancies documented. She'd mapped every corner of Branch Dynamics' operation, identifying the same patterns her father had taught her to recognize. Karen opened her working file. Anomalies. Elliott Vance's shell companies. 8 of them, each receiving monthly payments disguised as consulting fees. The money laundered through Cyprus banks before returning to private accounts in the Cayman Islands. $300 million stolen over 4 years. But that wasn't the revelation that made her hands tremble slightly. She pulled up a deeper file, one she'd cracked only last week after months of decryption. Apex Original.algo, her father's algorithm, not the corrupted version presented at trial. The real one, complete with Robert Crawford's digital signature and timestamps proving creation in 2003, 2 years before Harrison Branch acquired it. She'd found it buried in Branch Dynamics' own servers, hidden in archived files that should have been deleted years ago. Someone, probably Harrison Branch himself, had been arrogant enough to keep the original as a trophy. The evidence was irrefutable. The timestamps couldn't be faked. The code structure matched her father's unique approach, including Easter eggs he'd built in. Her mother's birthday, converted to hexadecimal. Marcus's middle name, encoded in the variable structure. Karen's fingers flew across the tablet. She opened another file. The challenge. Raymond's mockery tonight hadn't been random. She'd engineered it. The accidental correction of his report. The quiet competence that would bruise his ego enough to lash out publicly. She'd needed him to make the offer. Needed it recorded. Needed witnesses. Run my company for a day. 24 hours was enough. Enough to access the system she couldn't reach as a janitor. Enough to expose Elliott Vance's fraud and force a federal investigation. Enough to plant the algorithm evidence where it couldn't be ignored. Enough to destroy the empire built on her father's stolen genius. Her tablet chimed softly. An alert. Sarah Mitchell's office light still on, unusual for this hour. Karen filed it mentally, another thread to pull. She closed the files, returned the tablet to its hiding place, and resumed cleaning. The motion was meditative. Wax on, wax off, creating shine from dullness. Karen paused at the window, looking out over Manhattan's glittering skyline. Somewhere out there, her family's graves marked endings. But endings could become beginnings if you were patient enough, invisible enough, smart enough to wait for the perfect moment. Raymond Branch had just given her that moment. She picked up her mop, whispered to her reflection in the darkened glass. The Crawfords fell in silence. But silence won't save them this time. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the video. Accept the challenge. I'll make sure you get access. A friend. Karen stared at the message. Deleted it. But allowed herself the smallest smile. The game had begun. Jessica Torres hit post at 11:53 p.m. without a second thought. Raymond's 26-year-old PR assistant had edited the boardroom footage down to 47 seconds of pure entertainment. She'd added captions in impact font, CEO challenges, janitor to run company, followed by crying, laughing emojis. The hashtags wrote themselves, #janitor challenge, #corporate, humor, #branch dynamics. By 2 a.m. the video had 47,000 views. By 6 a.m., 2.3 million. By the time Karen arrived for her morning shift, yes, she worked doubles 3 days a week, the clip had been shared across every major platform. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, where it sparked the most vicious debates. Karen learned about it from the security guard. "You're famous, Marcus." "Different, Marcus. Older, kinder," said as she signed in. He turned his phone screen toward her. The video played on loop, Raymond's voice cutting through, "Run my company for a day, and I'll marry you." Her face, caught in profile, the executives laughing. Her calm response that the video cut off before completion. "Comments are wild," Marcus continued, scrolling. Half think you're a hero. Other half—" He trailed off, uncomfortable. Karen glanced at the screen. The comments section was a war zone. Wall Street bro, this is what's wrong with America. Janitors thinking they can do executive work. Stay in your lane. 14.2K likes at social justice. Now, the way they laughed at her. This is classism at its most toxic. I hope she takes him up on it. 22.7K likes at finance. Dude bro, bruh, this is hilarious. Imagine a cleaning lady trying to read a balance sheet. 8.1K likes at empowerment daily. Her face, she's not afraid, she's calculating. I'd love to see her prove them all wrong. 1.4K likes. Karen handed the phone back. People have too much time. You gonna do it? Take his challenge? She adjusted her cleaning cart. I'm going to do my job, Marcus. But as she pushed toward the elevators, she noticed something different. People stared. Employees she'd passed invisibly for 3 years suddenly saw her. Some smiled supportively. Others smirked. A junior analyst whispered to his colleague as she walked by, both laughing. Karen's expression never changed. She'd learned invisibility from years of practice. Their attention was temporary, their memory shorter still. By 10 a.m., Raymond's office had fielded 247 media requests. CNN wanted an interview. Good Morning America wanted him on their workplace culture segment. Business Insider wanted a profile on leadership in the age of social media. Raymond sat behind his desk, watching The View counterclimb. 5.8 million now. His phone buzzed constantly. Board members, investors, his father's old colleagues. This is incredible exposure, Jessica enthused, standing in his doorway with her tablet. We're trending in 17 countries. The brand awareness alone? Can we monetize it? Raymond interrupted. Jessica blinked. Monetize the mockery? The moment. Raymond leaned back in his chair. Every eyeball on that video is an eyeball on branch dynamics. Let's give them something to watch. His mind worked quickly, the same strategic thinking that had doubled the firm's assets in 3 years. We turn it into a charity event. Janitor for a day. She gets to shadow me, sit in on meetings, see how a real company runs. We donate $10 to, I don't know, literacy programs or something, for every view the follow-up video gets. Jessica's fingers flew across her tablet. We could stream it live. Transparency angle. Show we're good sports about viral moments. Exactly, Raymond smiled. And when she's overwhelmed and out of her depth, we look magnanimous for trying. Win-win. What if she actually does well? Raymond's laugh was sharp. She mops floors, Jessica. She probably doesn't know the difference between equity and equality. The announcement went live at 2 p.m. At Branch Dynamics, we hear you, Internet. Karen Crawford has been invited to participate in Executive for a Day this Friday. All proceeds benefit the National Literacy Foundation. Let's show what happens when we bridge divides. Janitor challenge. Corporate responsibility. The PR spin was masterful. Raymond looked generous, not cruel. The company looked progressive, not elitist. And Karen remained exactly what she'd always been. A prop in someone else's narrative. Or so they thought. Karen read the announcement on her phone during her break. She sat in the basement break room, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Around her, 3 other night staff ate lunch. Manuel, Rosa, and Dimitri, all absorbed in their own phones, their own lives. Friday, 3 days away. She'd need to be ready. Karen pulled up her encrypted notes app. The checklist she'd been building for 3 years. Map all executive server access points. Clone Elliot Vance's office keycard. Document shell company transactions. Secure original Apex algorithm. Access main financial database. Plant evidence trail for federal investigation. Expose fraud during maximum visibility. 3 days to finalize everything. That evening, Elliot Vance arrived at Raymond's office unannounced. The CFO looked worse than usual. His normally pressed suit was wrinkled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He closed the door behind him with deliberate care. "We need to talk about the SEC inquiry." Raymond looked up from his laptop. "What SEC inquiry?" "Routine audit, scheduled for next month." Elliot poured himself whiskey from the decanter, hands unsteady. "They're reviewing our vendor contracts, payment structures, consulting arrangements." "So, everything's clean." Elliot's silence spoke volumes. Raymond set down his laptop slowly. "Elliot, tell me everything's clean." "It is, mostly, but there are arrangements that might require context. Explanations that work better before federal investigators start asking questions." "What kind of arrangements?" "The legitimate kind. Tax optimization. Overseas consulting that maximizes our competitive—" "How much?" Elliot drained his glass. "We should discuss this with lawyers present." Raymond stood, walked to the window. 17 stories below, Manhattan moved with indifferent efficiency. "The viral video. The charity stunt. This is the worst possible timing for scrutiny." "I know. Can you make it go away? The audit?" "Not go away. But delay, maybe. If we're careful." Elliot set down his glass. "And Raymond? The janitor? Karen Crawford. Keep her away from financial documents during your little publicity stunt." "She's a janitor, Elliot. She probably doesn't know what a P&L statement is. Just keep her supervised, contained." After Elliot left, Raymond stood alone in his office, unease creeping through his confidence. The video had seemed like a joke. Now it felt like a crack in carefully constructed walls. At 2 a.m. Karen entered Elliot's office. She'd waited until his secretary left, until the executive floor emptied completely. The cloned keycard worked perfectly. She'd tested it 17 times over 6 months. His office was meticulous. Leather furniture, mahogany desk, walls lined with awards and photos of Elliot shaking hands with governors, senators, CEOs. Karen moved to his desk. Powered on his computer, she had his password, lifted from observing his keystrokes over dozens of nights. The ledgers opened like a confession. Apex Consulting Solutions, 4.2 mm monthly, routed through Cyprus. Sterling Strategic Partners, 3.7 m monthly, registered in Delaware, operated from the Caymans. Vanguard Advisory Group, 2.1 m, monthly, no physical address. 8 shell companies total, all receiving regular payments disguised as legitimate consulting fees. All owned by trusts that traced back, through layers of corporate obfuscation, to Elliot Vance. But there was something else. A folder marked Branch Senior Legacy. Karen opened it, her breath caught. Email chains between Harrison Branch and Elliot Vance, dated 2004 to 2005. Discussion of neutralizing Crawford's competitive advantage. Plans to acquire assets during bankruptcy proceedings. References to prepared testimony and cooperative federal contacts. They'd planned her father's destruction together. Elliot had helped Harrison Branch steal everything. And now Elliot was stealing from Raymond, the son who'd inherited an empire built on theft. Poetic, tragic, perfect. Karen photographed every document, uploaded them to her encrypted cloud. then cleared her digital tracks and powered down the computer. She resumed cleaning, wiping surfaces that didn't need wiping, creating the illusion of purpose. Her reflection smiled back from Elliot's darkened window. Friday wasn't just a publicity stunt. It was the end game. Karen whispered to the empty office, her voice carrying quiet certainty. "He doesn't know I've already accepted his challenge." Outside, Manhattan glittered with oblivious beauty. 3 days until the world learned what invisibility could build, what patience could destroy. 3 days until the Crawfords spoke again. Friday arrived with the cold clarity of Judgment Day. Karen woke at 5 a.m. in her studio apartment in Queens, the same rent-controlled unit she'd lived in since MIT, furnished with Craigslist finds and discipline. She made coffee, black, no sugar. Reviewed her notes one final time. Deleted the encrypted files from her tablet. Everything she needed was already memorized, backed up in offshore servers that would activate automatically if she failed to check in by midnight. She dressed in her janitor's uniform, navy blue shirt with Branch Dynamics facilities embroidered on the breast, matching pants, steel-toe boots that had carried her through 3 years of invisible work. Today, invisibility ended. The live stream began at 9 a.m. sharp. Jessica Torres had orchestrated it perfectly. 3 cameras positioned strategically in the main boardroom, a production crew from a digital media company, a custom hashtag, #executive4a-day, already trending as 127,000 viewers logged in during the pre-show. Raymond stood in the lobby, greeting arriving media with practiced charm. He wore his navy Tom Ford suit, the one that photographed well under studio lighting. His smile was confident, magnanimous, the smile of a man who'd already won. "Today's about breaking down barriers," he told a CNN reporter, the camera catching his best angle, showing that corporate America isn't some ivory tower. Anyone can learn. Anyone can contribute. The subtext was clear to anyone listening. But not everyone can lead. Employees gathered in the common areas, watching on mounted screens. The IT department had set up viewing stations throughout the building. This wasn't just a publicity stunt anymore. It was the most entertainment Branch Dynamics had seen in years. In the break room, Manuel turned to Rosa. "You think she'll last an hour?" Rosa, who'd worked alongside Karen for 2 years, said quietly, "I think she'll surprise everyone." At 9:47 a.m., Karen entered the building. The lobby fell silent. She walked past the security desk. Marcus gave her a subtle nod, past the gathering employees, past the cameras that swiveled to track her movement. She carried nothing except a single legal pad and a pen. Her uniform looked different today. Not diminished, but transformed. The fabric carried itself like armor. Her posture radiated something that made people step aside instinctively. Raymond met her at the elevator, his smile bright for the cameras. "Miss Crawford, ready for your big day?" Karen met his eyes. "I've been ready for 3 years, Mr. Branch." Something in her tone made his smile falter for a microsecond. Then he recovered, gesturing toward the elevator. "Let's show you how a real company runs." The boardroom was packed. 15 executives, the same ones who'd laughed 6 days ago, sat around the mahogany table. Elliot Vance occupied his usual seat, hands folded, expression neutral, but eyes watchful. Sarah Mitchell sat near the back, tablet ready, her face carefully blank. The cameras captured everything. 127,000 viewers became 348,000 as Karen entered. She didn't sit immediately. Instead, she walked the perimeter of the room, looking at the screens mounted on the walls. Real-time financial data, market indices, trading volumes, The digital heartbeat of a $3 billion empire. Before we begin, Karen said, her voice calm and clear, I'd like to understand what I'm working with. May I see this quarter's P&L statement, the current balance sheet, and the most recent cash flow analysis? Raymond blinked. He'd expected nervousness, deference, maybe a request for coffee. That's quite technical, Miss Crawford. I assume you want me to actually run the company, not just pose for photos. Karen turned to face him. Or was this entire exercise just theater? The viewers' count jumped to 580,000. Elliot cleared his throat. Perhaps we should start with something simpler. An overview of our— I clean these offices every night, Karen interrupted, still calm. I've read every document left on every desk for 3 years. I know your revenue streams, your client portfolios, your operational costs. What I need now is current data to make informed decisions. So, P&L, balance sheet, cash flow. Please. The room went absolutely silent. Raymond's jaw tightened, but he nodded to his assistant. Get her the reports. Jessica scrambled, pulling up documents on the main screen. Karen studied them with absolute focus. Her eyes moved across columns of numbers with the precision of a laser cutting steel. 30 seconds of silence. 60. 90. Then, your operational efficiency ratio is 68%. Industry standard for firms your size is 55 to 58%. You're hemorrhaging approximately $47 million monthly in unnecessary overhead. Marcus Chen, the senior analyst who'd laughed loudest 6 days ago, leaned forward. That's actually correct. We've been trying to identify— It's in your vendor contracts. Karen pointed at the screen without looking at him. You're paying premium rates for services that should be commoditized. Legal consulting at $850 per hour when market rate is $600. IT infrastructure maintenance at 23% above competitive bids. Catering services— She paused. Why are you spending $47,000 monthly on executive dining when you could negotiate a flat-rate contract for $28,000? Dead silence. David Sterling, the head of operations, pulled out his own tablet, fingers flying. His face went pale. She's right. Every number. How did you— I read. Karen's tone was matter-of-fact. Now, let's talk about your consulting contracts. Specifically, Apex Consulting Solutions. Elliot Vance went rigid. Karen pulled out her legal pad, though she didn't need to reference it. You've paid Apex $4.2 million monthly for the past 18 months. That's $75.6 million total. For what service, specifically? Elliot's voice came out measured. Strategic advisory, market analysis, competitive intelligence. Show me one deliverable, one report, one piece of actionable intelligence that justified $75.6 million. The boardroom had forgotten to breathe. Raymond looked at Elliot. That's a fair question. It's confidential work, Elliot said. Proprietary methodologies that— It's a shell company registered in Cyprus with no employees, no office, and no operational history prior to 2021. Karen's voice never rose, never wavered. I'm recommending immediate suspension of all payments pending a full audit of deliverables. That alone saves $50.4 million annually. The viewer count hit 1.2 million. Marcus Chen was typing furiously now, cross-referencing public records. His face showed the exact moment he confirmed Karen's claim. Holy shit! She's right. Apex doesn't exist. This is highly inappropriate. Elliot stood abruptly. We're discussing sensitive financial matters in a public forum. You made this public. Karen cut him off. You invited cameras. You live-streamed this to prove I couldn't do this job, so let me do it. Properly." Raymond's expression had shifted from amused to fascinated to something approaching concern. The woman standing before him bore no resemblance to the janitor he'd mocked. "Continue," he said quietly. By 11 a.m., Karen had identified $83 million in annual savings. She worked through department budgets with surgical precision, asking questions that exposed inefficiencies the executives had lived with for years. Why was the marketing department spending $12 million on advertising campaigns that generated 2.1% ROI when digital strategies could achieve 8.3% at half the cost? Why were they maintaining office space in Chicago that sat empty 11 months a year? Why had nobody questioned the 34% markup on their insurance premiums when 3 competitors offered identical coverage for less? Each question landed like a scalpel cut, precise, bloodless, revealing. The executives stopped laughing and started listening. Sarah Mitchell leaned over to David Sterling. "Where did she learn this?" "I don't know," he whispered back. "But we should have hired her years ago." At 11:47, Karen addressed the room again. "Your biggest vulnerability isn't operational. It's strategic. You're overexposed in commercial real estate at a moment when that sector is contracting. Your portfolio shows 34% concentration in CRE assets that are underperforming by 19%. I recommend immediate rebalancing. Divest 40% of CRE holdings and redirect capital into technology infrastructure and renewable energy. The market indicators all point toward a—" "Wait!" Raymond held up his hand. He'd been quiet for 40 minutes, watching with growing unease. "You're recommending we restructure our entire portfolio based on, what, your feelings? Based on analysis you should have done 6 months ago?" Karen pulled up a chart on the screen, data she'd memorized from midnight reviews of reports that executives left carelessly on desks. CRE defaults are up 23% year over year. Remote work has permanently reduced demand for office space. Meanwhile, tech infrastructure spending is projected to grow 41% annually through 2027. This isn't speculation. It's reading the data that's already in front of you. Marcus Chen was nodding. "She's absolutely right. I've been saying this for months." "Then why didn't you act on it?" Karen turned to him. "I presented recommendations. They were tabled for further review." "Further review means indefinite delay." Karen looked at Raymond. "How much is this company paying people to generate recommendations you ignore?" The live stream chat exploded. At Investor Watch. "Is this really a janitor, or did they hire a ringer?" At Market Maven. "I'm a portfolio manager, and her analysis is flawless." At Finance Daily. Branch Dynamics about to get schooled by their own cleaning staff. Viewer count 2.1 million. By 1 p.m., employees were taking notes. Karen had moved beyond cost-cutting into operational transformation. She identified bottlenecks in the approval process that delayed deals by an average of 11 days. She spotted redundancies in reporting structures where 7 people did the work of 3. She questioned why junior analysts were spending 60% of their time on administrative tasks instead of actual analysis. "You're paying Harvard MBAs to format PowerPoint slides," she said. "Hire administrative support at $65,000 annually and free up analysts earning $240,000 to do what you actually need. That's basic resource optimization." In the employee break room, the crowd had swelled. People from accounting, IT, operations, even the executive assistants watched in silence as Karen systematically dismantled and rebuilt the company's operational framework. "She's actually doing it," Rosa whispered. "She's actually running this place." Manuel shook his head in wonder. And she's better at it than half the executives. At 2:15 p.m., Karen addressed compensation structure. Your executive to median employee pay ratio is 342:1. Industry average is 185.1. You're overpaying at the top while underpaying the people who actually make this company function. She looked directly at Raymond. Your salary is $8.4 million annually. Your janitors make $30,160. That's a 279.1 ratio for one person. Is your labor really worth 220 years of theirs? The live stream chat went nuclear. At Workers Unite. Drag him. At Corporate Reform. This is the revolution we needed at CEO. Watch, Raymond Branch is getting destroyed on his own stream. Raymond's face had gone from amused to annoyed to something approaching respect tinged with fear. Are you suggesting I cut my own salary? I'm suggesting you examine whether this compensation structure serves the company or just your ego. Karen's voice remained level. High executive pay is defensible when it correlates with exceptional performance. Your stock has underperformed the S&P 500 by 12% over 3 years. So no, I don't think you're worth 279 janitors. Somewhere in the building, someone started clapping. Then someone else. Within 30 seconds, applause echoed through the common areas. Employees, people who'd never spoken to Karen, who'd passed her in hallways for years without seeing her, were cheering. Raymond heard it through the boardroom walls, the sound of his own workforce turning. 4:47 p.m., the live stream had 4.7 million viewers. News outlets were picking up the story. Business Insider. Janitor outperforms CEO in real-time corporate takeover. CNBC. Viral challenge backfires as janitor genius revolutionizes billion-dollar firm. The Wall Street Journal. Karen Crawford, the invisible analyst who saw everything. Karen stood at the head of the boardroom table, 14 hours into a day that had shattered every assumption about competence, class, and power. In conclusion, she said, addressing the camera as much as the room, this company has extraordinary potential being undermined by structural inefficiencies, strategic short-sightedness, and a compensation philosophy that values title over contribution. Everything I've recommended today can be implemented within 90 days. The question is whether leadership has the humility to act on analysis that challenges their assumptions. She turned to Raymond. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Branch. It's been educational. The room erupted in applause. Real applause, from executives who'd started the day expecting entertainment and ended it taking notes from a woman they'd dismissed as help. Raymond sat frozen, his smirk long gone, replaced by something between admiration and existential crisis. The live stream ended with Karen walking out of the boardroom in her janitor's uniform, shoulders straight. Power radiating from every step. The final viewer count, 6.2 million. The final headline, trending worldwide, a janitor genius. And in his office, watching the replay alone, Raymond Branch realized that the joke had never been on Karen Crawford. It had always been on him. The building emptied slowly after 6 p.m. Employees left in clusters, still buzzing about what they'd witnessed. The live stream had ended, but the story was just beginning. Social media exploded with takes, analyses, breakdowns of every decision Karen had made. Financial analysts were already writing opinion pieces. Business schools were requesting permission to use the footage as case studies. Karen remained in the boardroom. You should go home, Jessica said, packing up camera equipment. You've earned it. That was incredible. I need to finish a few things. Karen's eyes never left the financial reports still displayed on the screens. Is there a workstation I can use? Somewhere quiet? Jessica hesitated. The executive workstations require special access. I ran your company for 12 hours. I think I've earned computer privileges. Raymond, who had been silent for the past hour, nodded to Jessica. Give her access to Conference Room C, guest credentials. After they left, Karen gathered the reports she'd reviewed throughout the day. But these were just the surface layer, the acceptable inefficiencies, the defensible waste. What she needed lived deeper, in the systems she couldn't access during a live-streamed performance. She had maybe 4 hours before security protocols changed, before her temporary access expired, before the moment passed. 4 hours to finish what her father had started 20 years ago. Conference Room C was smaller, windowless, designed for confidential meetings. Karen logged into the guest terminal using credentials Jessica had provided. Limited access meant for external consultants reviewing non-sensitive data. But Karen had spent 3 years mapping this network. She opened a command prompt, fingers flying across the keyboard. A script she'd written months ago, compressed, elegant, nearly invisible, deployed across the network. It exploited a vulnerability in the guest authentication system, a flaw she'd discovered during her second month when she'd noticed the IT director leaving his password on a post-it note. Amateur security. Expensive mistake. Within 90 seconds, she had administrative access. The real branch dynamics unfolded before her like a classified file, finally declassified. She started with Elliot Vance's directory. His official files showed clean records, board meeting minutes, quarterly reviews, compensation analyses, standard CFO work. But Karen had learned from her father. The truth lived in the metadata, in the timestamps that didn't align, in the files marked archived but modified last week. She found the first discrepancy at 7:43 p.m. A subfolder labeled Legacy Accounts Historical, dated 2019, but last modified 3 days ago. Inside, spreadsheets tracking payments to 8 consulting firms. Apex Consulting Solutions, Sterling, Strategic Partners, Vanguard Advisory Group, Meridian, Capital, Insights, Pinnacle, Financial Services, Quantum Strategy Group, Helios, Business Solutions, Nexus, Corporate Advisors. She'd already exposed Apex during the live stream, but this was bigger. Karen opened each file methodically. The pattern emerged like a constellation connecting dots others had missed. Each shell company received monthly payments ranging from $2.1 million to $4.8 million. The invoices were professionally formatted, line items for strategic advisory, market analysis, competitive intelligence, operational consulting. But when Karen cross-referenced the payment dates with the company's corporate registrations, the timeline collapsed. Apex Consulting Solutions, Incorporated, March 2021. First invoice to Branch Dynamics, January 2021. Impossible. You can't bill a company 2 months before you exist. Sterling Strategic Partners, registered in Delaware by a law firm that specialized in anonymous corporate structures. No employees, no office, no website, no presence beyond a P.O. box and a bank account. Every company was a ghost. Karen pulled up the bank routing numbers from the payment records. They led to accounts in Cyprus, the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, jurisdictions famous for financial opacity. But Karen had tools that most people didn't. 3 years of methodically collecting information. Encrypted connections to databases that required federal clearance or significant hacking expertise. She'd prepared for this moment. Using credentials she'd obtained from a dark web contact, a former NSA analyst who now sold access to classified financial databases, Karen traced the ultimate beneficiaries of those shell company accounts. The first account resolved to a trust, Vance Family Holdings. The second, Elliott J. Vance Irrevocable Trust. The third, EJV Asset Management, LLC. Her breath caught. Every shell company, every fake consulting contract, every fraudulent invoice, all led back to Elliott Vance. But there was more. Karen dug deeper into the payment authorization records. Every invoice required 2 executive signatures, the CFO, Elliott, and 1 board member. She pulled up the signature logs. David Sterling authorized 47 payments totaling $89.3 million. Margaret Chen authorized 34 payments totaling $67.8 million. Robert Blackwell authorized 29 payments totaling $54.2 million. Patricia Gonzalez authorized 41 payments totaling $78.9 million. 4 board members, all complicit. The total, $290.2 million stolen over 4 years. Karen sat back, the weight of the discovery pressing down like gravity, intensifying. This wasn't just embezzlement. This was a criminal conspiracy at the highest levels of the company. A betrayal that made her father's false conviction look like amateur hour. And it was still happening. The most recent payment had cleared 3 days ago. At 9:17 p.m., Karen heard voices in the hallway. She minimized her windows, pulled up a benign financial report. The door opened, building security, making rounds. "Evening, ma'am. Didn't expect anyone still here." Karen looked up calmly. "Just finishing my analysis. Mr. Branch asked me to prepare recommendations." The guard nodded. "Saw you on the live stream. My daughter's been texting me about you all day. Says you're a hero." "I'm just trying to help." After he left, Karen waited 5 minutes before resuming. The evidence was overwhelming, but evidence alone wouldn't stop this. Elliott would delete everything the moment he suspected exposure. The board members would lawyer up, destroy records, claim plausible deniability. She needed to act now, decisively, irreversibly. Karen opened a new terminal window and accessed the company's primary financial management system, the platform that controlled all outgoing wire transfers, payment authorizations, vendor contracts. Using her elevated access, she navigated to the pending transactions queue. Tomorrow morning, $12.4 million was scheduled to transfer to 3 of the shell companies. The weekly payment cycle that had run for 4 years, invisible to everyone except the conspirators. Karen canceled the transfers. Then she went further. She accessed the historical payment records for all 8 shell companies, the complete 4-year trail of fraud. Using a script she'd prepared months ago, she compiled every transaction into a comprehensive evidence package. Dates, amounts, routing numbers, beneficiary accounts, authorization signatures, corporate registrations. The file was 2,147 pages of irrefutable proof. At 10:03 p.m., Karen encrypted the file and prepared for the riskiest move of the night. She was about to commit a felony, or save a company. Perspective mattered. Karen accessed the shell company bank accounts. The same dark web credentials that had let her trace the ownership also granted her transactional access. The security on these accounts was minimal. Criminals assumed anonymity was protection enough. Wrong assumption. Starting with Apex Consulting Solutions, Karen initiated a reversal transfer. $75.6 million from the Cyprus account back to Branch Dynamics' primary operating account. Then Sterling Strategic Partners $67.3 million returned. Vanguard Advisory Group, $45.8 million. One by one, she reversed every fraudulent payment from the past 4 years, draining the shell company accounts and repatriating the stolen funds. The transfers would take 24-48 hours to clear internationally, but the transactions were irreversible once initiated. $292 million recovered. But Karen didn't send the money back to Branch Dynamics directly. That would trigger immediate flags, allow Elliott to intercept or obscure the source. Instead, she routed every dollar into a federal escrow account maintained by the Securities and Exchange Commission for seized assets pending investigation. Then she did something that would change everything. She sent the 2,847-page evidence file to 3 recipients: SEC Enforcement Division, anonymous tip through an encrypted portal, FBI Financial Crimes Unit, routed through a VPN chain that masked her origin, the Wall Street Journal investigative desk, with a 48-hour embargo and a note. The biggest corporate fraud case of 2025 is breaking at Branch Dynamics. Evidence attached. Confirm with SEC before publishing. The email sent at 11:34 p.m. There was no taking this back. No undoing what she'd just unleashed. Karen cleared her digital tracks, wiped the terminal logs, and shut down the workstation. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the enormity of what she'd just accomplished. 20 years of planning, 3 years of invisible work, 1 night of execution. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Numbers don't lie. People do. Tonight, the numbers had spoken truth that couldn't be silenced. Raymond returned to the office at 11:47 p.m. The investors' dinner had run long. Everyone wanted to discuss the viral janitor, the live stream, the woman who'd outperformed their CEO in real time. Raymond had smiled, deflected, made jokes that felt increasingly hollow as the evening progressed. But underneath the performance, unease had grown like a tumor. Who was Karen Crawford, really? The building should have been empty. Instead, lights blazed across multiple floors. Raymond heard voices, urgent, tense, coming from the executive suite. He found Elliott Vance in his office, on the phone, face drained of color. "I don't care what time it is. Check again, every account, now." Elliott's hand shook as he gripped his cell phone. "What's going on?" Raymond demanded. Elliott looked up, eyes wild. "We've been hacked. Someone accessed the financial systems. Unauthorized transfers. The accounts are—" He stopped, calculating how much to reveal. "What accounts?" Before Elliott could answer, David Sterling burst through the door, tablet in hand. "The SEC just called. Emergency audit tomorrow morning. They're sending a full investigative team." Raymond's blood went cold. On what grounds? Anonymous tip about fraudulent vendor contracts. They mentioned Apex Consulting by name. All 3 men turned simultaneously toward the conference room where Karen had worked. Raymond walked down the hall, dread building with each step. The conference room was dark, the terminal logged out. No sign of recent activity except a legal pad left on the table. On it, in precise handwriting, a single sentence. "Sometimes cleaning up requires exposing what others tried to hide." Raymond stared at the note, his mind racing through implications, connections, impossibilities that suddenly felt inevitable. Behind him, his phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking. SEC launches investigation into Branch Dynamics. Anonymous tip. Alleges 300 malware fraud. Then another alert. Branch Dynamics stock halted pending federal investigation. Then another. Janitor genius suspected in exposing massive corporate fraud. The building's lobby erupted with activity. News vans, federal vehicles. agents in suits carrying boxes of equipment. Raymond descended to the main floor in a daze. The scene was controlled chaos. FBI agents conferring with SEC investigators, employees being questioned, security footage being seized. And in the center of it all, calm as the eye of a hurricane, stood Karen Crawford. She wore her janitor's uniform. Her posture was relaxed, her expression serene. She was giving a statement to a federal agent, her words measured and precise. When she saw Raymond, she excused herself and walked over. "Mr. Branch? What did you do?" His voice came out hoarse. "I finished the job you hired me to do." Karen's eyes held his. "I ran your company for a day, found the problems, fixed them. The $300 million embezzled by your CFO and 4 board members is now in federal custody. The evidence has been provided to appropriate authorities. Your company will survive, but it won't be the same." Raymond couldn't process the words. "Who are you?" Karen smiled, sad, knowing, final. "You knew my father, Mr. Branch, Robert Crawford. 20 years ago, your father destroyed him with false accusations, stole his work, and built this empire on theft." She gestured to the building around them. "I'm his daughter, and I just saved the company that murdered my family." The words hit Raymond like a physical blow. How did you—" "I've been here 3 years," Karen said softly. "Watching, learning, waiting for the right moment. You gave me that moment when you mocked me, when you challenged me to run this company for a day." She stepped closer. "I didn't come for revenge, Mr. Branch. I came for truth. Your CFO and board members were stealing from you the same way your father stole from mine. The difference is, I had the evidence. I had the skill, and I had nothing left to lose." Behind them, agents led Elliot Vance out in handcuffs. His face was ashen, his expensive suit rumpled, his world collapsing in real time. Employees gathered at windows, phones out, recording everything. Raymond looked at Karen, really looked at her for the first time. The intelligence he'd missed, the pain he'd mocked, the power he'd never seen because he'd never bothered to look. "Who are you, really?" he whispered. Karen's smile was gentle but devastating. "I'm the woman who cleaned your floors while learning to destroy everything built on my father's stolen brilliance. I'm the daughter who spent 20 years becoming invisible so I could finally be seen." She paused. "And as of tonight, Mr. Branch, I'm the person who saved your company from the same fate that destroyed mine." She turned and walked toward the exit, where federal agents waited to take her formal statement. Raymond stood alone in his lobby, surrounded by the ruins of certainty, watching the janitor who'd just rewritten his entire understanding of power, intelligence, and worth. The last thing he heard before she left, Karen speaking to an FBI agent. "Everything you need is in the files I sent. Every transaction, every signature, every lie." And then she was gone, leaving Raymond to face the truth she'd uncovered, and the reckoning that was only just beginning. The federal agents left at 3:47 a.m. Karen gave her statement in a conference room. 4 hours of detailed testimony, walking investigators through every discovery, every transaction, every piece of evidence she'd compiled. They asked how she'd accessed the systems. She told them about the security vulnerabilities, the careless password management, the digital footprints Elliot had left like breadcrumbs. They asked if she'd broken any laws. Her lawyer, retained that afternoon after a single phone call to a legal aid organization, answered for her, My client acted as a whistleblower exposing criminal activity. Any technical access she obtained was incidental to uncovering fraud that threatened the financial stability of a major investment firm. The lead FBI agent, a woman named Sarah Chen, studied Karen with something approaching respect. You could have stolen that money yourself, routed it anywhere. Instead, you sent it to federal custody. I'm not a thief, Karen said quietly. I'm my father's daughter. By the time they finished, dawn was breaking over Manhattan. The building had emptied except for essential personnel and the remaining federal team securing evidence. Karen stood in the lobby, exhausted, watching the sunrise paint the glass towers gold. Miss Crawford, she turned. Raymond stood 15 feet away, looking like he hadn't slept. His tie was gone, collar unbuttoned, the careful polish stripped away to reveal something raw underneath. We need to talk, privately. Karen nodded. Your office? My office. The executive suite felt different at dawn. The same glass walls, the same leather furniture, the same commanding view of Manhattan, but the authority it represented had cracked like a fault line exposing bedrock. Raymond closed the door behind them. For a moment, neither spoke. Sit, he finally said, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. I've spent 3 years standing in this room while you sat, Karen replied. I'll stand now. Raymond flinched, but didn't argue. He moved to the window, back to her, hands in his pockets. The FBI says you saved the company, that Elliott and 4 board members stole $290 million over 4 years, that without your intervention, we'd have collapsed by Monday when the SEC audit uncovered everything. He turned to face her. They say you're a hero. I'm not a hero. Then what are you? His voice rose slightly, frustration breaking through. You're not a janitor. That much is obvious. The way you analyzed those reports, the way you understood systems that take years to master. He stopped. Who are you, Karen Crawford? Karen met his eyes, held his gaze with the full weight of 20 years of truth. You knew my father. Silence crashed between them like thunder. His name was Robert Crawford. He founded Crawford Equity in 1998. By 2005, he managed $4.2 billion in assets using a proprietary algorithm he'd developed, Apex, Adaptive Portfolio Optimization. It generated returns that made him one of the most respected strategists on Wall Street. Raymond's face had gone pale. Crawford Equity. The firm that was destroyed in 2005, yes. Karen's voice remained steady, clinical, though her hands had begun to tremble. Destroyed by accusations of securities fraud, insider trading, and client fund misappropriation. Accusations that came from an anonymous tip, evidence that was fabricated, testimony that was purchased. Your father orchestrated it. The words cut through his denial like a scalpel. Harrison Branch wanted my father's algorithm. He approached Robert Crawford about a partnership in April 2005. My father declined. The algorithm wasn't for sale. Karen pulled out her phone, opened a secure folder. So your father found another way. She held up the screen. A scanned document. A memo on Branch financial letterhead, dated April 23, 2005. From Harrison Branch to Elliott Vance, Crawford situation. The algorithm is worth 500 million plus in competitive advantage. Crawford refuses partnership. We proceed with alternative acquisition strategy. Legal confirms that bankruptcy liquidation allows asset purchase at pennies on dollar. Need catalyst for Crawford's collapse. Discuss tomorrow. Raymond's hands shook as he took the phone, reading and rereading the memo. Where did you get this? Your father kept records, trophies of his conquests. Karen's voice hardened. I found them in archived files on Elliot's server. He and your father were partners in the destruction of Crawford equity. They planned everything together. She swiped to the next document. An email exchange between Harrison Branch and an FBI agent named Thomas Kirkland. Branch, we need Crawford investigated. I can provide evidence of irregularities. Kirkland, what kind of evidence? Branch, the kind that stands up in court. I'll make sure of it. Your father paid Agent Kirkland $150,000 through a shell company. I have the bank records. In return, Kirkland initiated a federal investigation based on evidence your father provided. Fabricated transaction records, falsified client statements, testimony from witnesses who'd been paid to lie. Raymond sank into his chair, the phone still in his hands. Karen continued, her voice gaining momentum. 20 years of silence finally breaking. My father was arrested in May 2005. The trial lasted 8 weeks. The prosecution's case relied entirely on documents that forensic analysis later proved were forged. But that analysis came too late, wasn't admissible. The jury convicted him based on lies. 25 years in federal prison. She swiped to another document. A photograph of 2 men shaking hands. Harrison Branch and Robert Crawford. Dated March 2005. A month before the betrayal. My brother Marcus tried to defend him. He was brilliant. Harvard MBA, already making a name as Crawford Equity's VP of Operations. They framed him too, made him part of the conspiracy. 15 years. Raymond's voice came out hoarse. I didn't know. You were 19. Karen's tone softened slightly. I'm not saying you were responsible, but your father was. And the empire you inherited was built on what he stole from mine. She pulled up another file. Lines of code, timestamps, metadata. The Apex algorithm. Your father acquired it during the bankruptcy liquidation for $8.7 million, 2% of its actual value. He rebranded it as Branch Dynamics Proprietary Trading System. But it's the same algorithm, same structure, same logic. My father's genius, your father's name. She held up the phone so Raymond could see the code comparison. 2 columns of programming, identical except for variable names and comments. The algorithm that made Branch Dynamics a $3 billion firm, my father created it. Your father stole it. Everything you've built, every success you've celebrated, every dollar you've earned, it's all founded on intellectual property theft and the destruction of an innocent man. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Raymond stared at the evidence, his face cycling through disbelief, recognition, horror. His hands trembled as he scrolled through the documents. There were dozens more. Memos, emails, bank records, testimony transcripts with highlighted perjury. A paper trail so comprehensive, so damning, that denial became impossible. My brother died in prison in 2007, Karen continued, her voice catching slightly. Official cause, suicide. Unofficial, he was beaten to death by inmates who'd been paid to kill him. My father died a year later. Pneumonia that went untreated because the prison medical system didn't care about a convicted fraudster. She took a breath, steadying herself. My mother lasted 6 more months. Heart attack, broken heart. I was 21 years old, alone. My family destroyed. Our name synonymous with fraud. I couldn't get hired anywhere. Who wants to employ the daughter of Robert Crawford, the thief? Karen, I finished my PhD working 3 jobs: behavioral finance, MIT. Published my dissertation under a pseudonym because my real name was Poison. I could have gone anywhere, done anything. I had offers from firms across the country. She stepped closer to his desk. But I came here, to Branch Dynamics. Applied for the one position nobody pays attention to. The one job where I'd be invisible, dismissed, overlooked. Because I needed access. I needed to understand how the empire built on my father's ashes actually functioned. Raymond's voice was barely a whisper. 3 years. 3 years of cleaning your offices, reading your reports, learning your systems, watching patterns emerge. And you know what I discovered? Karen's eyes blazed. Your father didn't just steal the algorithm. He was stealing from his own firm, too. Small amounts at first, hidden in consulting contracts and offshore accounts. Elliot learned from him, perfected the technique. By the time Harrison died, Elliot had turned theft into an art form. She placed both hands on Raymond's desk, leaning forward. You inherited an empire built on theft, and your CFO was stealing from you the same way your father stole from mine. The irony is almost poetic. The office door opened. Sarah Mitchell entered, followed by 3 remaining board members, the ones not implicated in Elliot's scheme. They'd been summoned by Raymond's assistant an hour ago, told to come immediately, told nothing else. They stopped when they saw Karen standing in Raymond's office, the CEO pale and shaken behind his desk. Raymond? Sarah's voice carried concern. What's going on? Raymond looked up at them, then at Karen. Tell them. Are you sure? Karen asked quietly. They need to know. Everyone needs to know. His voice was hollow. The truth. All of it. Karen turned to face the board members, the same people who'd laughed 6 days ago, who'd watched her mop their floors for 3 years without ever seeing her. My name is Dr. Karen R. Crawford. I hold a PhD in behavioral finance from MIT. My father was Robert Crawford, founder of Crawford Equity. She paused, letting the name register. In 2005, Harrison Branch, Raymond's father, orchestrated the destruction of my family's firm through fabricated fraud charges. He stole my father's proprietary algorithm and used it to build Branch Dynamics. My father died in prison for crimes he didn't commit. My brother was murdered. My mother died of a broken heart. Sarah's hand went to her mouth. The board members' faces showed shock, confusion, the beginning of understanding. I've spent 3 years working as a janitor in this building, compiling evidence of the original theft, and documenting the ongoing fraud committed by Elliot Vance and 4 of your former colleagues. Last night, I recovered $290 million in stolen assets and provided evidence to federal authorities that will likely result in criminal charges. My God, Sarah whispered. Karen pulled out a USB drive, set it on Raymond's desk. This contains everything. The complete evidence of Harrison Branch's conspiracy to destroy Crawford Equity. The forged documents, the paid testimony, the theft of the Apex algorithm. Proof that Branch Dynamics' success was founded on stolen intellectual property and the systematic destruction of an innocent man's life and work. Marcus Chen, the senior analyst who'd mocked her, who'd later praised her analysis, stepped forward. Why did you save the company? If everything you're saying is true, why not let it burn? Karen's expression softened. Because I'm not my father's destroyer. I'm his daughter. He taught me that truth matters more than revenge, that justice isn't about tearing down, it's about setting things right. She looked at Raymond. Your father built this empire on ashes. But you didn't know. The employees here didn't know. They don't deserve to lose everything because of crimes committed before most of them were hired. She picked up her phone, showing them the code comparison. But they deserve to know the truth. The algorithm that powers this firm was created by Robert Crawford in 2003. Every trading strategy, every competitive advantage, every dollar of profit generated by your proprietary system, it's all his work, his genius, his legacy that was stolen and rebranded. The board members stared at the evidence, the weight of revelation settling over them like snow. Raymond's voice broke the silence. "What do you want? Money? Position? We can make this right. You can't make this right." Karen's voice was firm, but not unkind. "My father is dead. My brother is dead. My mother is dead. No amount of money brings them back. No position restores their reputations. Then what?" Raymond looked broken. "What do I do with this?" Karen held his gaze. "You tell the truth, publicly. You acknowledge that Branch Dynamics was built on stolen intellectual property. You clear my father's name. You establish a foundation in his honor to support families destroyed by corporate fraud. And you run this company with the integrity your father lacked." She stepped back from the desk. "Your family built an empire on my father's ashes. Now you get to decide whether that empire stands for the theft that created it or the truth that will redefine it." The sunrise had fully broken now, light flooding through the glass walls, illuminating the faces of people wrestling with truths that shattered their understanding of everything they'd built their careers on. Karen walked toward the door. "Miss Crawford," Sarah called out, "what will you do now?" Karen paused, turned back. "I'm going to bury my father with the honor he deserved. And then I'm going to rebuild what your firm destroyed. The right way this time." She left them there, Raymond at his desk, surrounded by evidence of his father's crimes. The board members grappling with their complicity in perpetuating an empire built on theft. The dawn light exposing everything that darkness had hidden. In the hallway, Karen pressed the elevator button. Her reflection in the polished steel doors showed a woman transformed. Not invisible anymore, not silenced, free. The elevator descended, carrying her away from the building where she'd spent 3 years hidden, toward a future where the Crawford name would finally mean what it should have meant all along: truth, integrity, justice. The doors opened to the lobby, where morning was breaking, and a new chapter, for her, for Raymond, for everyone touched by the revelation, was just beginning. Raymond didn't leave his office for 18 hours. The USB drive Karen had left contained 847 files. He opened them one by one, chronologically, watching his father's conspiracy unfold like a crime documentary where he knew the ending but couldn't stop watching. April 14, 2005, email from Harrison Branch to his personal attorney. "Crawford's algorithm is the future. If he won't sell, we take it another way. Legal says bankruptcy acquisition is cleanest. We just need Crawford bankrupt." April 29, 2005, memo from Harrison to Elliot Vance. "Agent Kirkland is cooperative. 150K ensures FBI opens investigation. We provide the evidence. Make it airtight." May 3, 2005. Invoice from a document forgery specialist in Prague. $87,000 for consulting services, actually payment for fabricating transaction records that would become the prosecution's primary evidence. Raymond's hands shook as he read. His father's handwriting in the margins. Perfect. This destroys him. June 12, 2005. Transcript of Harrison Branch's testimony at Robert Crawford's trial. Under oath, his father had described discovering the fraud during due diligence. The lies were eloquent, detailed, delivered with manufactured reluctance. The jury had believed every word. Raymond pushed away from his desk, stomach churning. He walked to the window, the same view his father had commanded for 20 years before passing it to him. Manhattan stretched below, indifferent and eternal. Who was Harrison Branch? The man Raymond remembered, stern but fair, demanding but principled. A father who'd taught him about integrity, about building value, about earning respect through excellence. All lies. The man in these documents, ruthless, calculating, willing to destroy an innocent family to acquire a competitive advantage. A thief who'd wrapped himself in legitimacy while crushing anyone who stood in his way. Raymond's phone buzzed. His mother calling. The 4th time today. He'd ignored them all. What could he say? Mom, Dad was a criminal who destroyed an innocent man and built our entire life on stolen work? The phone went silent, then buzzed again immediately. A text from his sister Emily, the one who'd idolized their father. Raymond, what's happening? The news is saying things about Dad. Tell me it's not true, please. He couldn't respond. The truth would shatter her the way it had shattered him. At 11:23 a.m., Elliot Vance made his move. He'd been released on $2 million bail 6 hours earlier. Electronic monitoring anklet attached. Passport confiscated. His lawyer had advised silence. Elliot had other plans. He entered the Branch Dynamics building using his executive access, not yet revoked, an oversight in the chaos, went straight to his office, locked the door. His personal laptop contained everything the federal evidence hadn't captured yet. Communications with offshore bankers, instructions to shell company administrators. The real accounting that showed exactly where $290 million had gone. Delete it all, and the prosecution's case weakened significantly. Maybe enough for reasonable doubt. Maybe enough to avoid 20 years in federal prison. Elliot opened his encryption software, selected the incriminating folders. His finger hovered over Delete Permanently. The office door burst open. FBI agent Sarah Chen, followed by 4 federal marshals in tactical gear. Step away from the computer, Mr. Vance. Elliot froze. You can't just... I have rights. We have a warrant for electronic evidence and reasonable belief you're attempting to destroy it. Agent Chen moved forward, signaling a digital forensics specialist. Put your hands on the desk. This is harassment. My lawyer. Your lawyer is downstairs being informed that you violated the terms of your bail by accessing company premises. Chen's voice was steel. You're under arrest for obstruction of justice. As marshals cuffed him, Elliot's eyes went wild. This is Karen Crawford's doing. That bitch set me up. She... Mr. Crawford is a whistleblower who prevented $290 million in theft from continuing, Chen interrupted. You're a thief who got caught. There's a difference. They led him out through the lobby. Employees watched in silence as Elliot Vance, the respected CFO, the mentor, the man who'd worked alongside Harrison Branch for 30 years, was perp-walked to a waiting federal vehicle. His fall was complete. By 2 p.m., the arrests were complete. Federal agents had taken David Sterling from his home in Greenwich, Margaret Chen from her office at a nonprofit board she chaired, Robert Blackwell from a golf course in Westchester, Patricia Gonzalez from her daughter's college graduation ceremony, 4 board members who'd authorized fraudulent payments, collected kickbacks, and betrayed their fiduciary duty. The media coverage was relentless. Every financial news network led with the story. CNBC, branch dynamics fraud, 290 mudmarders, theft exposed by Janitor. Bloomberg. From mop to mic, how Karen Crawford saved a billion-dollar firm. WSJ, the Crawford legacy, theft, redemption, and corporate reckoning. Branch Dynamics stock had opened at $127. By 10 a.m., panic selling drove it to $89. Investors fled, afraid the company would collapse under the weight of scandal. But then, the narrative shifted. Analysts actually read Karen's recommendations from the live stream. They realized that she'd identified real problems, proposed legitimate solutions, and exposed fraud that would have bankrupted the firm within months. By noon, institutional investors started buying. By 2 p.m., the stock had recovered to $118. By market close, $134, $7 higher than opening. The market had spoken. Branch Dynamics was worth more without its corrupt executives than it had been with them. At 4:37 p.m., Raymond gave his first statement. He stood in the lobby, the same spot where Karen had been humiliated 6 days ago, surrounded by cameras, reporters, employees who'd gathered to hear what their CEO would say. His prepared remarks sat in his pocket, unread. The careful PR language crafted by crisis communications specialists. The defensive posture that admitted nothing while apologizing for everything. Raymond looked at the faces watching him. People who'd dedicated careers to this company, who'd believed in the Branch name, who deserved truth, not spin. My father, Harrison Branch, was a criminal. The lobby went silent. In 2005, he orchestrated the destruction of Crawford equity through fabricated fraud charges, stolen intellectual property, and the systematic dismantling of an innocent man's life and career. Robert Crawford was a brilliant financial strategist whose only crime was refusing to sell my father his yacht's proprietary algorithm. Raymond's voice cracked slightly, but he continued. My father stole that algorithm. He used it to build Branch Dynamics. Every success this company has achieved, every competitive advantage we've claimed, every dollar of profit we've generated, it's all built on theft, on lies, on the ashes of the Crawford family. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Raymond held up his hand. Karen Crawford, Dr. Karen Crawford, spent 3 years working as a janitor in this building while documenting fraud, exposing corruption, and ultimately saving this company from collapse. She did this while carrying the weight of knowing that the empire she was protecting was built on her father's stolen work. He paused, the full weight of his next words settling in his chest. I mocked her. I challenged her as a joke. I thought she was invisible, insignificant, beneath my notice. I was wrong about everything. That night, Raymond returned to the boardroom, the same glass-walled space where this had all begun. Empty now, silent. The chairs arranged exactly as they'd been 6 days ago when 15 executives had laughed at Karen's quiet correction. Raymond sat in his usual seat, the head of the table, the position of power. It felt hollow. He thought about his father sitting in this same chair, making decisions that destroyed families while believing he was building legacy. The cognitive dissonance required to testify against an innocent man while maintaining a reputation for integrity. How did you live with that? How did you look in the mirror? Maybe you didn't. Maybe you convinced yourself that success justified the means, that competition required ruthlessness, that winning was the only morality that mattered. Raymond pulled out his phone, opened the video from 6 days ago. Watched himself throw down the challenge. Run my company for a day and I'll marry you. The laughter. The phone's recording. Karen's calm acceptance that he'd dismissed as delusional confidence. She'd been calm because she'd already won. She'd accepted because she'd been waiting 3 years for exactly this moment. He'd thought he was mocking a janitor. He'd actually been challenging the daughter of the man his father had destroyed. Armed with evidence and intelligence that would dismantle everything Raymond thought he knew about his family, his company, his life. Raymond's reflection stared back from the darkened windows. Young, privileged, hollow. A man who'd inherited power without understanding its cost. He whispered to the empty room, to the ghost of his father, to the memory of Karen Crawford walking away with her dignity intact. I mocked the woman who saved everything my father destroyed. The words hung in the silence, an epitaph for an empire that would have to be rebuilt, this time on truth instead of theft, on integrity instead of stolen genius. Raymond sat alone in the boardroom as Manhattan's lights flickered to life below, each one a reminder that power without principle was just another form of darkness. And in that moment, surrounded by the ruins of his certainty, Raymond Branch finally understood what Karen had known all along. The only legacy worth building is one you can defend in daylight. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. on Monday, 5 days after Karen's revelation. Branch Dynamics' main auditorium held 300 people, media from 17 countries, financial analysts, employees, and federal observers ensuring transparency. The back wall displayed the company logo, soon to be redesigned to remove Harrison Branch's initials from the corporate seal. Raymond stood backstage, reviewing notes he'd written and rewritten a dozen times. His hands were steady now. The initial shock had crystallized into something else. Purpose, born from devastation. 5 minutes, Mr. Branch, the event coordinator said quietly. Raymond nodded, took a breath, walked toward the stage entrance, and stopped. Karen Crawford stood in the hallway, wearing a navy suit. Professional, elegant. Nothing like the janitor's uniform she'd worn for 3 years. Her hair was pulled back. Her posture radiated the quiet confidence he'd missed for so long. Miss Crawford, I didn't know you'd be here. I wanted to hear what you'd say. Her tone was neutral, evaluating. Raymond stepped closer. I'm going to tell the truth. All of it. My father's crimes. The stolen algorithm. Your family's destruction. Everything. And then I'm going to offer you what should have been yours from the beginning. Karen's expression didn't change. We'll see. The auditorium fell silent as Raymond took the podium. Cameras focused. Recorders activated. The world was watching, not for entertainment this time, but for accountability. Good morning. My name is Raymond Branch, CEO of Branch Dynamics. I'm here today to address revelations about this company's founding, my father's criminal actions, and the extraordinary woman who exposed a truth we should have confronted decades ago. He clicked to the first slide, a photograph of Robert Crawford, circa 2004, standing in his office. This is Robert Crawford, founder of Crawford Equity. In 2005, my father, Harrison Branch, orchestrated Mr. Crawford's destruction through fabricated fraud charges, paid testimony, and forged evidence. The goal was simple: acquire Crawford Equity's proprietary trading algorithm, Apex, at a fraction of its value. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Raymond continued. My father succeeded. Robert Crawford was convicted on false charges and died in prison in 2008. His son Marcus died in 2007 under suspicious circumstances. His wife passed away from a heart attack in the same year. An entire family destroyed so that my father could steal intellectual property and build this company. He advanced to the next slide, side-by-side code comparisons. The algorithm that powers branch dynamics, our proprietary system, is Robert Crawford's work. We've operated for 20 years on stolen genius, claiming innovation that wasn't ours, building wealth on another man's brilliance. Reporters were typing furiously. Analysts stared in disbelief. Raymond's voice strengthened. 5 days ago, Dr. Karen Crawford, Robert's daughter, exposed $290 million in fraud committed by our CFO and 4 board members. She saved this company from collapse while carrying the knowledge that everything we'd built was founded on her father's stolen work and her family's destruction. He gestured to the side of the stage. "Dr. Crawford, would you join me?" Karen emerged from the wings. The auditorium erupted. Cameras flashing, reporters standing, employees applauding. She walked to the podium with measured grace, standing beside Raymond. "Dr. Crawford spent 3 years working as a janitor in our building," Raymond continued, his voice thick with emotion. "We walked past her. We ignored her. I mocked her. And she remained invisible while documenting corruption, identifying inefficiencies, and ultimately exposing fraud that would have destroyed us." He turned to face Karen directly. "You saved the company built on your father's ashes. You could have let it burn. Instead, you chose truth over revenge, justice over destruction." Raymond addressed the audience again. "Effective immediately, I'm offering Dr. Crawford full control of Branch Dynamics' restructuring, complete authority to reform our practices, reshape our leadership, and restore integrity to a company that lost it the day my father chose theft over honor." The room went silent, waiting for Karen's response. She stepped to the microphone. "I appreciate Mr. Branch's offer, but I decline." Gasps, confusion. Raymond's expression showed surprise. Karen continued, her voice clear and unwavering. "I didn't come here for power. I came for truth. And truth requires more than just handing control to the victim of past crimes. It requires systemic change, transparency, and accountability that goes beyond one person's authority." She looked at Raymond, then at the audience. "What I will accept is this. Branch Dynamics will establish an independent ethics board with authority to audit all financial practices, vendor contracts, and executive decisions. That board will include myself, external corporate governance experts, and representatives chosen by employees, not management." Reporters leaned forward. This was unprecedented. Second, Branch Dynamics will publicly acknowledge that its core trading system was created by Robert Crawford. The algorithm will be renamed the Crawford Branch Adaptive Portfolio System, crediting its true creator. A portion of profits generated by this system will fund a foundation in my father's name. Raymond nodded immediately. "Agreed." Third, Mr. Branch will commit to publishing annual transparency reports detailing executive compensation, vendor relationships, and any conflicts of interest. These reports will be audited by federal regulators and made publicly available. "Agreed," Raymond said again, his voice firm. Karen turned to face him fully now. "I don't want your power, Mr. Branch. I want your integrity. I want this company to become what it should have been from the beginning. A place where excellence matters more than ego, where truth matters more than legacy." Raymond's eyes glistened. "You have my word, and my commitment." An emotional silence settled over the room. Then Raymond did something that would define his redemption more than any words could. He stepped away from the podium, walked to where Karen stood, and slowly, deliberately, knelt before her. The auditorium gasped. Cameras flashed like lightning. Raymond's voice carried clearly despite his position. 3 years ago, you cleaned my floors in this building. You worked invisible, dismissed, mocked. Today, you've cleaned something far more important. He looked up at her, tears visible now. You cleaned my soul, Dr. Crawford. You showed me that power without principle is just another form of poverty. That legacy built on theft, it is no legacy at all. That the most profound strength comes from those we overlook. Karen's composure cracked slightly. Her eyes welled. You saved my company. But more than that, you saved me from becoming my father. From perpetuating cruelty I didn't even know existed. From living a lie I'd inherited without questioning. He remained kneeling, the CEO humbled before the janitor. The position reversal complete. I can never restore what my father took from you, but I can spend the rest of my career ensuring that this company honors your father's memory by becoming worthy of his genius. Karen extended her hand. Raymond took it, and she helped him to his feet. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but carried to every corner of the auditorium. Redemption isn't given, Mr. Branch. It's earned, through action, through change, through the daily choice to be better than what came before. She paused. But I believe you can earn it. I believe this company can earn it. They stood together, the CEO and the janitor, the son and the daughter. Two people connected by tragedy, choosing to build something better from its ruins. The silence broke. Applause started in the back. Employees who'd watched Karen work for 3 years without seeing her. Then the journalists joined, recognizing they were witnessing something beyond scandal. The analysts followed. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was standing, applauding not for performance, but for transformation. After the conference, in a quiet hallway away from cameras, Karen and Raymond spoke alone. The Crawford Initiative, Karen said, I'm establishing it this week. Full scholarships for women from disadvantaged backgrounds pursuing finance degrees, mentorship programs, job placement assistance. Branch Dynamics will be the founding donor, Raymond replied, $20 million to start. Then 5% of annual profits in perpetuity. Karen nodded. Thank you. It's not enough. It will never be enough. No, Karen agreed. But it's a beginning. Raymond pulled an envelope from his jacket. One more thing. The deed to my father's estate in Connecticut. It's worth about $8 million. I'm transferring it to you, not as payment, that would be insulting, but as acknowledgement that everything my family has came from yours. Karen took the envelope, opened it, studied the deed. I'm going to turn it into a rehabilitation center, she said quietly, for families affected by wrongful convictions. A place where they can rebuild what the justice system destroyed. Raymond smiled, genuine, sad, hopeful. Your father would be proud. So would yours, Karen replied. The father you thought he was. They stood in silence, two people carrying different weights of the same tragedy, choosing to transform inheritance into integrity. Outside, Manhattan continued its indifferent rhythm, but inside Branch Dynamics, something fundamental had shifted. The empire built on ashes was learning to rise not through theft, but through truth. And at its foundation, finally, was the one thing that had been missing since Harrison Branch's first crime: honor. 6 weeks later, Branch Dynamics looked the same from the outside. 17 stories of glass and steel towering over Manhattan's financial district. But inside, everything had changed. The executive suite had been redesigned. Where Harrison Branch's portrait once dominated the reception area, a new installation now stood, a digital memorial wall displaying photos and biographies of financial professionals who'd made significant contributions to the industry. Robert Crawford's image appeared first with the caption, "Pioneer, Visionary, the foundation upon which integrity was rebuilt." The boardroom had 5 new members, 3 external ethics experts, 1 employee-elected representative from operations, and Dr. Karen R. Crawford, who'd insisted on being listed not as a victim or a whistleblower, but simply as advocate for corporate accountability. Elliott Vance and the 4 complicit board members were awaiting trial, their bail revoked after additional evidence emerged of witness tampering. The SEC had recommended sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years. But the most profound changes weren't visible in the architecture or the org charts. They lived in the daily rhythms of how people worked. Karen's office was on the 14th floor, deliberately chosen, high enough to have influence, low enough to remain accessible. The nameplate read, Dr. Karen R. Crawford, Chief Ethics Officer and Director of Corporate Integrity. Inside, her space was modest. A desk with 2 monitors, bookshelves lined with finance texts, behavioral economics research, and framed photographs. Her father in his office, her brother at his Harvard graduation, her mother in the garden of their Connecticut home. She'd been in the role for 3 weeks, and already the culture was shifting. Her first initiative, mandatory ethics training for all employees, from executives to maintenance staff. Not corporate boilerplate, but real discussions about conflicts of interest, reporting mechanisms, and the difference between loyalty and complicity. Her second, an anonymous reporting system with guaranteed protection and direct escalation to external regulators if internal review proved insufficient. Her third, monthly Crawford Conversations, open forums where any employee could raise concerns about company practices without fear of retaliation. The woman who'd spent 3 years invisible was now the most visible voice for integrity in the building. That evening, most of the building had emptied by 7 p.m. Raymond remained in his office, reviewing the quarterly report that would be published tomorrow, the first fully transparent financial disclosure in Branch Dynamics history. Every vendor contract, every executive compensation detail, every potential conflict of interest, clearly documented. The stock had stabilized at $142, higher than before the scandal broke. Investors, it turned out, valued honesty more than they feared accountability. Raymond's phone buzzed, a text from his sister Emily. "Watched your interview on CNBC. Dad would have hated it. I think that means you did the right thing." He smiled. Emily had struggled with the revelations about their father, but she was coming to terms with truth, slowly, painfully, necessarily. Raymond stood, stretched, decided to do a final walkthrough before heading home. He'd developed a new habit, ending each day by walking the floors, greeting the cleaning staff by name, asking about their families, their concerns, their observations. Visibility went both ways now. As he descended to the executive suite, he heard a familiar sound, the soft swish of a mop against marble. Raymond stopped. Through the glass walls of the main boardroom, he saw her. Karen, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, mopping the floor. Her cleaning cart sat in the corner, not the Branch Dynamics cart, but her own supplies, brought from home. For a moment, Raymond couldn't move. The sight triggered memories of 6 weeks ago. A lifetime ago, when she'd been invisible and he'd been blind. He opened the boardroom door quietly. Karen, she looked up, smiled. Raymond. Working late? Could ask you the same thing. He stepped inside, gestured at the mop. You don't have to do that anymore. Karen dipped the mop in the bucket, wrung it out with practiced efficiency. I know. Then why? She continued mopping, the motion rhythmic and meditative. When I first came here 3 years ago, I told myself I was cleaning to stay invisible, to gather evidence, to infiltrate the empire that destroyed my family. Raymond leaned against the table, listening. But somewhere along the way, it became something else. This, she gestured with the mop, became a kind of meditation, a reminder that every surface can be restored, that dirt doesn't define a space, it's just something covering what's underneath. She moved across the floor, creating a path of gleaming marble. After my father was convicted, after my brother died, after my mother's heart gave out, I was so angry, furious at the injustice, at the lies, at how easily truth could be buried under money and power. Karen paused, wrung out the mop again. Cleaning taught me patience. You don't restore a floor in one pass. You work section by section, methodically, returning again and again until the shine comes through. It's not dramatic. It's not quick. But it's honest work. Raymond's voice was quiet. You were cleaning more than floors. I was cleaning away my own rage, Karen said softly, transforming it into something useful, something purposeful. She looked at him. Revenge would have been easy. Let the fraud collapse the company. Watch the branch name become synonymous with corruption the way Crawford became synonymous with fraud. Why didn't you? Karen set down the mop, met his eyes directly. Because my father taught me that destruction is easy. Any fool can tear down, but building something true, something that lasts, that requires integrity. It requires choosing what's right over what's satisfying. She picked up the mop again, continued her work. So I still clean, Raymond, not because I have to, but because it reminds me where I started. Reminds me that the most profound changes often come from the places no one's looking. That transformation begins with the quiet decision to make something better, even when no one's watching. Raymond watched her work, the motion almost hypnotic. After a moment, he rolled up his sleeves. Show me how. Karen looked up, surprised. What? Show me how to do it properly. If I'm going to rebuild this company from the ground up, I should understand what that actually means. A slow smile crossed Karen's face. She handed him a cleaning cloth and spray bottle. Start with the table. Small circles. Even pressure. Don't rush. Raymond began cleaning the mahogany surface where he'd mocked her 6 weeks ago, where executives had laughed, where power had been performed and integrity had been absent. They worked in comfortable silence. The CEO and the ethics officer, the son and the daughter, 2 people choosing to build something new from the ruins of something broken. 20 minutes later, the boardroom gleamed. Karen and Raymond stood at the window, looking out over Manhattan. The sun had set, leaving the sky painted in shades of purple and gold. The city's lights began flickering to life. Millions of stories unfolding in parallel. The Crawford Initiative launches next week, Karen said. 50 full scholarships for the first year. We've already received 2,000 applications. That's incredible. Your donation made it possible. Your vision gave it purpose. Raymond paused. Have you thought about what comes next? After you've reformed branch dynamics, after the initiative is established, what's your next chapter? Karen smiled. I'm going to finish what my father started. Not the company he lost, but the work he believed in. Research into ethical investment strategies. Algorithms that optimize not just profit, but social impact. Finance as a tool for building, not extracting. The Crawford way. The way it should have always been. They stood together as twilight deepened, two people who'd been connected by tragedy and transformed by truth. Below them, the city moved with indifferent momentum. But inside this building, something fundamental had shifted. An empire built on theft was learning to stand on integrity. A legacy of destruction was becoming a foundation for restoration. Karen picked up her mop and bucket, prepared to leave. Karen, Raymond said softly, thank you for everything you've taught me about humility, about truth, about the difference between power and purpose. She turned back, her expression warm. Some offers change everything, Raymond. 6 weeks ago, you made me an offer you thought was a joke, a challenge you believed I'd fail. And you turned it into a revolution. Karen's smile held wisdom earned through pain, strength forged through loss, hope built on ruins. Maybe not, but sometimes you clean what others leave behind. Not because you must, but because it reminds you where you started. And sometimes, in the cleaning, you discover that what seemed like an ending was actually a beginning. She walked toward the elevator, the mop bucket wheels squeaking softly against the marble floor. The camera perspective pulled back, slowly, cinematically, rising from the gleaming floor where Karen had worked invisible for 3 years, past the boardroom where truth had finally been spoken, up through the 17 stories of glass and steel, emerging above the building to reveal the full Manhattan skyline glowing in twilight. The city sprawled below, infinite and eternal, its lights forming constellations of human ambition, struggle, triumph, and redemption. And in one small building among thousands, 2 people had chosen integrity over inheritance, truth over comfort, humanity over hierarchy. The final image held, the skyline at dusk, beautiful and indifferent, containing multitudes. A title appeared, Some Offers Change Everything. Then darkness, but the kind of darkness that contains possibility, the kind that precedes dawn. The end. In memory of all those whose brilliance was stolen, whose truth was silenced, whose worth was overlooked, until someone finally chose to see.